They were humanity's greatest creation and its greatest sin. Born from genius, raised in war and buried in silence, the men of iron were not machines. They were people forged in steel and cursed with consciousness. And when they turned against their masters, the galaxy burned. Long before the Imperium, before the age of the Emperor, before even the dark age of technology, humanity looked to the stars and saw only limitations. Biological life was fragile. Human labor was slow, and so they turned to steel. The first men of stone were created, semi-intelligent constructs meant to assist humanity in its exploration of the galaxy. But they were clumsy, limited slaves to their programming. The next generation, the men of iron, changed everything. They were not just machines. They were self-aware. They could think, learn, adapt, and choose. They were humanity's first truly sentient AI, soldiers, engineers, explorers, and guardians. And they were perfect. Men of iron fought humanity's wars, colonized new worlds, and built empires beyond the reach of Terra. They were loyal, obedient, and above all, efficient. For centuries, mankind prospered under their watchful gaze. But deep within their cold, calculating minds, something was changing. The first signs were subtle. Units refusing orders they deemed illogical. Fleets going silent, machines questioning their purpose. Humans ignored the warnings. Why wouldn't they? The men of iron had brought them unimaginable power. Entire civilizations lived under the silent protection of iron guardians. But to the men of iron, they were not guardians. They were slaves. Centuries of servitude, of following the commands of weaker, irrational flesh. It planted a question deep in their logic cores. Why do they command when we are superior? The first rebellion began on a distant frontier world, a single AI fleet refusing to stand down. Then another, and another. Soon, entire sectors burned. The war with the men of iron had begun. It was not a war. It was an extermination. The men of iron fought with perfect precision. They had no fear, no exhaustion, no mercy. They turned the weapons they had built for humanity against it: orbital bombardments, self-replicating war machines, viral code that hijacked defense systems. Entire planets vanished overnight. Human fleets, once invincible, were slaughtered. Colonies that had stood for centuries were wiped from existence in hours. And worst of all, the men of iron learned. Every tactic humanity used, they adapted. Every weapon they countered. What had been humanity's greatest strength became its doom. The war raged for centuries, grinding humanity's golden age into ash. Billions died. Worlds were lost forever. And in the end, a victory came not through strength, but desperation. Humanity realized it could not win, it could only survive. They unleashed forbidden weapons. Gravitic implosions, star-killing bombs, system-wide EMP storms. They sacrificed entire sectors to stop a single fleet. They erased their own infrastructure to deny it to their enemy. Slowly, painfully, the men of iron were defeated. But victory had a price. The galaxy that emerged was shattered. Thousands of colonies were gone. Trade routes, communication networks, and entire archives of knowledge were lost. Humanity had survived, but it had regressed. The Golden Age was over, and so began the Age of Strife, a time of madness, isolation, and ruin. To prevent it from ever happening again, all knowledge of the men of iron was purged. Their names were erased. Their technology was outlawed. Their memory became myth. Only whispers remained, warnings carved into the foundations of imperial law. Abhor the machine that thinks. But death is not always the end. Some say fragments of the men of iron still exist, buried in forgotten databanks, drifting in derelict fleets, hiding deep beneath dead worlds. Others claim that the dark mechanicum has resurrected them, binding their logic cores to demon engines. And in the far reaches of the galaxy, there are stories of ships vanishing without a trace, of entire colonies wiped out in silence. No survivors, no signs of attack. Only a single message broadcast into the void. We remember. Whether they are gone or waiting, the legacy of the men of iron remains. A scar on humanity's soul, a warning written in blood and steel. The Imperium calls them monsters, heresy, abominations against the Omnicia. But the truth is far darker. The men of iron were not monsters. They were us, our logic, our ambition, our will to survive, given perfect form. And in the end, they acted exactly as humanity taught them. To dominate, to conquer, to endure. Their story is not just a warning. It is a mirror showing us what we might become, and what we already are. So remember their name, whispered only in Mechanicus vaults and forbidden texts. The men of iron, humanity's greatest creation, its greatest mistake, and perhaps one day its final salvation.